Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys been enjoying the content channel as of late. Just been doing a lot more topic videos. Just did one a few days ago, and I'll be putting that one up, I believe, first. And then this one will come out second, a couple of days later. Just want to space it out. But hope you guys been having a good summer so far. And this is an interesting topic. I don't usually like to get into these kind of discussions, not anymore anyway, just because I feel like that those kinds of discussions are very alienating. But I feel within the parameters of how I'm framing it or how I'm going to attack the subject, I think it's a little bit more inclusive. You know, it's not just specifically catering to a specific demographic, and also not to say that I like color my opinions or whatever like that, but it's just to say that I can understand that, you know, there's a portion of people that will, you know, take those words and, you know, think of it in a very specific light. And, you know, it's not necessarily how I think, at least nowadays, but it's just to set up that, you know, I know that this sort of discussion welcomes to a little bit of the division. So what we're going to discuss today, and I've talked about it before, I've definitely talked about it in the context of creativity, and I'll link that video so you guys can see, because, you know, this is a subject that I think is more or less taken shape, especially in the film community, in the past couple of years, I've noticed, which has a lot to do with feminine leading films. So what I mean by this is that it is, you know, a film starring a woman, you know, and maybe in some cases it's a film about femininity, it's about feminism, all these sort of discussions that take place. And as I put up on my title, are these films good or are they bad? You know, just kind of getting a direct sort of confrontation on the subject, because before I was talking about it more in the broader scopes of creativity, how it plays to storytelling, and I guess more or less within a certain confine, you know, within the discussions of extremism, you know, how some storytellers, and, you know, a lot of these storytellers are becoming filtered in within Hollywood. You know, I'm not going to negate that. I mean, obviously they do exist, where they will discuss, you know, represent their characters, these female characters, as a dominant force. And I've made an argument in that video that I made that I don't think that framing it in that way is necessarily an empowering message. And I think that that kind of goes against a lot of the things that, you know, feminism should be about. But that's a whole other discussion that I'm not going to get into. I'm just mainly framing it in the whole context of film. Because there are people out there, and I was guilty of this a few years ago, where they will, you know, if there is a female lead, they will attribute it now as woke, or, you know, oh my gosh, like how dare you, you know, put up a woman, you know, in the lead role of something. And, you know, I feel like it is getting, or at least just how some people take to that. I think that it is a little bit, I think it's a little extreme, and I think that the notion that those decisions are always present within those stories or within those movies, you know, in every case when a woman gets a lead role, it doesn't always mean that, you know, it doesn't always mean that there's a ulterior motive behind it. Sometimes it just purely means that that person is the best fit for that role, you know? And to be frank about it and know that some people's feathers are about to get ruffled, you know, if that's the phrase, sorry, by what I'm about to say here, but some stories are just stories that need to be told by women. I mean, you're not going to do the story of Wonder Woman and have a man do that story, right? Like, you're not going to have a dude wear that costume. You got to have a woman play that role. It's Wonder Woman. You're not going to have, say, I don't know, like, they're going to have Supergirl be played by a man because now that's Superman, you know? Like, there's specific parameters within roles that call for specifics within gender, within, sometimes even within race. Like, you're not going to have a white dude play Black Panther, like, there's a cultural significance that sometimes comes within roles, and I think that some people forget that, and they, there's a bit of a self-absorbed mentality that starts to flourish within these sort of discussions. And trust me, I used to be like that, and I'm not going to sit here and say that it does not still happen. I mean, of course it does. We've had the Ghostbusters from 2016, when they tried to just switch out the men for just a bunch of women. We had that She-Hulk show, which from what I've been told is, pretty much just a that kind of extremist type of mentality within feminism that a lot of people do not like. Like, stuff like that still does happen. It absolutely does. But I think that the whole idea that conversation can then extend to, oh, well, females leading a film don't necessarily add up to success, and conversely, that's not true. I mean, there's plenty of films out there that, have women taking center stage that do great business. We have, of course, Barbie, we have Wonder Woman, we have the whole trilogy of Star Wars films, we have Captain Marvel, at least the first one, the Hunger Games series. Most recently, we had Alien Romulus, which had the female taking front and center stage. But we've also had some struggles. We just recently had Ballerina, which didn't do all that well. But I think that what people misunderstand is that when these sort of films flop, like, to name some other flops also, like, we had, of course, the Marvels, Captain Marvel 2, which flopped. We had Wonder Woman 2, which also didn't do all that well. We had a few films from Disney and Pixar, which didn't do all that well. Wish, as well as Elemental, which Disney would want to frame it as a film that did do well, but it didn't. Films with female leads have flopped. But the reasons why they flop is not because a woman is taking the center stage. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with any LGBTQ themes. It has nothing to do with all that stuff, Like, look at the Snow White thing, for instance. Like, that to me I think is a great example of, how conversations can kind of kill the momentum of a movie. And that is an instance of people who put in a whole bunch of crap, a whole bunch of stuff. And, there's other looming factors to it as well. Production, marketing expenses, there's a whole financial side of it also to why Snow White failed as massively as it did. It's not sugarcoating it, saying that it is one of the, and I said this in my video about the sequels and remake stuff. Snow White is one of the biggest failures in recent years. It absolutely is. And a lot of it has to do with the financial side of things. But the other side of that conversation is also a lot to do with the discussions that are being made online. A lot of these political discussions, a lot of these just attacking of the actress, a lot of the slanderings towards the cast, and just some decision makings. And, I still stand by my point that I think that Rachel Ziegler was just subjected to a lot of crap. And, I feel bad for her, I mean, she has a right to her own opinion, which I still find just weird. I find weird that people will attack a person just because they have a difference in opinion. Like, it's a movie. I mean, she's allowed to say whether or not she doesn't like a movie. And there are tons of people in Hollywood that we all know that all these actors who do like Marvel, DC, or big movies, they're doing it purely for a paycheck. We know that. Maybe there is a part of them that loves the source material. Maybe they grew up with it. But 9 times out of 10, they don't give a shit. They're just there to make their money, And it seems as though that Rachel Ziegler was kind of in that camp, just there to just make her money, which, hey, fine, good on her. If she wants to make her money, then make her money. But I also understand, again, the whole conversation that came about, well, you shouldn't talk shit if you're promoting a movie. Like, I get it. But that's an instance of how, it's like an outlier to where these sort of conversations kind of did dictate, what happens with a film and how it financially performs. Because a lot of times that really doesn't. A lot of people, I don't think they necessarily care about all that stuff. They don't care about those discussions. They don't care about, oh, well, it's a woman, or oh, she said this, or oh, she said that. In the case of Snow White, it was delays and upon delays, and then there was reshoots. There was a massive financial burden that was taken on. There were other things beyond those controversies that attributed to that film's bombing. But I just don't think that people really care all that much. And I don't really think they should care either when they go into the movie. I mean, sure, if a movie does talk in that way, I've said it before, like if a film wishes to, I mean, in films, stories are stories, right? I mean, you tell whatever story you want to tell. My thing is that when a story wishes to talk down to someone in that way, in my book anyway, I find myself at odds with it. I don't find myself involved or kind of included. I do feel that sense of distance, but that person has also every right to tell that story if they want to. If they want to talk about toxic masculinity, because that is a thing, it absolutely is a thing. As some people kind of don't want to bring up anymore, it's like, yeah, it is a thing. There is such a thing as, also just toxic femininity as well. I mean, those things do exist. They absolutely do. But this whole like kind of culture war where now if there's a female leading something, now there has to be this discussion, especially within mainstream media, which I find interesting because everyone, like, when they bring up the failures or the downsides, like, oh, you see, I've seen some videos about it, like when Ballerina came out, a video or so where people are like, oh, you see, it's the downfall of the feminine movement and stuff like that. It's everything to do with what the film literally is. In the case of Ballerina, it's not Keanu Reeves. So no one's going to go show up because that series hinders on Keanu Reeves. The reason why something like The Marvels didn't do well was because Captain Marvel wasn't exactly a film a whole lot of people liked. Because that was during a time when superhero films were at their peak. And then now you have something like The Marvels that comes out, which is all away from that time period. And then you see how actually people took to that sort of character. Like Captain Marvel especially, there's an interesting story. I don't know if I've ever told it on camera, but when I was in high school, I did a review for Captain Marvel, and I was very distant from a lot of like political discussions and stuff like that. I was in my own little world, my own little movie space, like that's where I operated in. And I went to see the movie, and I wasn't that enthusiastic about it. I thought it was okay. I didn't really say mean things about it, but I was not as enthusiastic by it. And I said that in my review. And I came back, and I was in journalism, by the way. This is where that review was published. It was on the high school newspaper page, their little online site. I came back to class, I think like a few days later, and I don't remember who it was, but I think it was my teacher told me, hey, did you see the comments on your review? And I don't know if I probably did check because I was always like an attention whore. But at that point I didn't. I went and checked, and there was some discourse, and one person, I traced it back to like where the discourse started, and it was based off a student's response where they didn't think that I did justice to the review. That's how they phrased it. They thought that I didn't do justice to the review because they didn't like how I critiqued Brie Larson's performance. Because I wasn't a fan of the performance. I found it to be a bit artificial. And they didn't particularly like my comments. And the irony is that I did a review a few weeks later for a film called, I believe it was Unicorn Store, and it was Brie Larson's directorial debut. She also starred in the film. And I gave that film a little bit more of a positive rating, as well as giving more credit to Brie Larson as an actor, as an actress. Same person comes into the comment section and they give me praise. So, and that's where all that discourse started with Captain Marvel. People really, really like, talking about this and that, and I just stayed out of it. But point is that things like that do occur. I'm not going to sit here and say that they don't. But the whole notion, the whole feeling that now whenever we see a female taking center stage, I feel as though that whole conversation is just so narrow-minded. I feel as though that it's a case-by-case basis. I would say that most of these movies, except I will acknowledge Captain Marvel kind of leans into that feminist sort of aura, but it's like outside of that, a lot of these films that I've mentioned, Barbie I would probably say is another one. Very so, I remember being one of them. But films like Wonder Woman, the Star Wars movies, Hunger Games, Alien Romulus, all these movies, they just happen to present a female protagonist. And that's the best thing, and that's what makes those kind of characters more likable, because they don't have to flex their gender. They don't have to throw their gender at your face. And that seems to me what happens most of the time. And it's just the internet that I feel that it makes these conversations more apparent, circling, finding their little piece, their little nuggets to where they can start promoting their politics or their perspectives. Oh, look, she is better than the man and stuff like that. And I'm wondering why that's also a problem. Like, why is that an issue when a woman at times can be shown to be better than a man? Like, I don't understand that. Like, especially when the dynamic between the dynamics, like, are we expecting a skinny dude to perform better than a woman who has a little bit more of a muscular build? Like, I just don't understand that. It's, like, I get some discussions from that, but it's just discussions that I feel are a little bit of a moot point when we're talking about just storytelling. If we're getting into the real world, there's a whole different place that you can get into with that conversation. But talking this film specifically, like, I think that the real issues are not to do with the females that are leading these movies. That's not the problems here. The issues are with the films themselves. The issues are to do with the fact that people are getting bored. They're getting tired of these franchises. All these films that I have mentioned, Wonder Woman, Star Wars, all these things, these are properties that people are getting tired of. And we're seeing that a lot this year with Marvel. DC is taking a big swing with their Superman project, and we'll see how that works out for them. Ballerina just most recently flopped. And these are all to do with fatigue and with lack of interest within the franchises, or a misjudgment of the franchise itself. Case in point, Ballerina. If that character was built up within the John Wick movies, more people would probably go and see it. But the fact that it's a brand new character, John Wick is not the title, the main protagonist, you're not going to have as many people go see it. So, in the case of the Disney Pixar films, the little animated features that they do, yeah, also those are getting fatigued as well, because people are getting kind of exhausted by formulas, by structures. They kind of want things to change, but at the same time, all they will see is this stuff, because they think of this. They don't think about all the other stuff. Not the small indies, not the other projects that grace the theater screen. They don't look for those kinds of movies, because it's about money. What are they spending their money towards? Which is what we discussed a lot in the remake and sequel discussion. But that call that they make does not have the thought of, well, should I seek this movie out because it has a woman in it? Maybe it's a part of it, but I don't think it is. I think they just look at something and go, hey, it's Star Wars, or hey, it's Marvel, or hey, it's DC, hey, it's Superman. Like, that's what people go by. They judge by the eye. They don't judge by conversations. They judge by the eye. And I think that I think it's a discussion that I feel is, I've noticed just kind of gotten out of hand because some people just got their hands so deep into their political discussions that they've kind of lost sight of the fundamental flaws within Hollywood today. It's not because of that. It's a small part of it. It absolutely is a small part of it, especially within the grasp for those professions. The ability to gain those professions. Sometimes those politics definitely are part of it. But when it comes to financial success, when it comes to financial stuff, like in the case of Snow White, that was a rarity. That was a rare thing where conversations and stuff like that dictated the success of a movie, And of course, the financial burden that film had was a huge part of it. But we can all agree that the conversations that took place within Snow White also attributed to that film's downfall. And that's a very, very rare thing for it to have such an effect on a box office. Because also it was a long time of that conversation being built online. That was a year's time of that project getting just torn apart online. So, like I said, it's just a rare thing, So, but most times it's purely to do with what it is and how social media perhaps takes to it in terms of just likability, not by the fact that it's a woman or that it's this or whatever. It's purely to do with just what it is and is it something worth seeing? So that's just how I'm looking at it now. I think that it's so easy to get wrapped up in the political conversations, and your ego just gets so fucking like you just start to think a certain way because, oh my God, how dare you talk shit to me? It's it's just movies, guys. It really is just movies. If we're talking in a broader sense, maybe, but even then, I'm just like, man, who gives a fuck, dude? I don't care. I'm just here to live my life. If y'all want to play these little games, fine. But it's I don't know. I got bigger fish to fry. You know what I mean? So, but yeah. You guys, let me know your thoughts. This is kind of an interesting discussion. We've had it before. Like I said, I'll leave the video at the end so you guys can see that, and seeing maybe how my opinion has changed over time. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I just don't. I don't agree that it's a bad thing. I think that maybe some of the judgment calls, yes, can definitely be attributed to politics and sometimes within just motivations, like they just want a woman on screen. Yes, that sort of stuff is sexist, and it does undermine that specific performance or performer itself, and a bit degrading if you ask me. But a lot of the times the movies that are out there and literally for what they are, it just doesn't seem like that's the whole point in my book. And I feel like that's a point that people are choosing to make in discussing the movies, and not necessarily what the movie itself is choosing to discuss. So, sometimes it's the case, but it's not always the case, which is the big distinction I think that people need to make. And I feel like that's kind of getting lost with some people. But you guys let me know, and be civil in the comments, please. I understand this sort of conversation could get people heated and riled up. Let's just be level-headed. It's just movies at the end of the day. It's just fun things to talk about. Entertainment. It's just entertainment. So let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.